United States continued across the Gulf region.
America's weapons stockpile is running low but Iran is still standing. America's military stockpile is shrinking.
The yeas are 216, the nays are 212. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
And that is becoming a growing concern inside the Pentagon. Every missile fired at Iran comes with a massive price tag, costing millions of dollars. As the conflict continues, the United States is spending billions across the Middle East. Meanwhile, Iran has managed to keep fighting while relying on far less expensive military tactics. Despite months of pressure, the country has not been defeated. When the conflict began, President Trump declared that the campaign would continue until Iran's military capabilities were completely destroyed. He also insisted that the United States had more than enough weapons to achieve that goal. But now, questions are beginning to emerge. Warships that were previously reported to have been sunk are still reportedly operating in the Persian Gulf. Iranian fighter jets, once believed to have been grounded by American strikes, have also been seen flying again. In addition, Iran's drone and missile programs continue to challenge the Pentagon's expectations. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, we'll take a closer look at reports about America's shrinking weapons stockpile, Iran's continued military resilience, and the strategies and costs shaping this conflict. Stay with us until the end as we break down the latest developments. The Pentagon's weapons stockpile is shrinking according to former Pentagon official Mark Kanshan. The United States has significantly reduced its stockpile of military equipment due to the large number of weapons used during operations involving Iran. Kanshan, who now serves as a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, told Al Jazeera that his team analyzed 7 major categories of weapons heavily used in the conflict. These same weapons would also be critical in any future conflict in the Western Pacific. His assessment suggests that the United States has already used between 1/3 and 1/2 of its available inventory in those categories. Kanshan, who previously worked on Pentagon budget strategy, also explained that rebuilding America's stockpile to its pre-conflict level could take anywhere from 2 to 5 years. He warned that this reduction could leave the United States more vulnerable if another major conflict were to break out elsewhere, such as in the Taiwan region, creating a potential gap in military readiness. The cost of war continues to rise so far. The conflict has reportedly cost the United States $37.5 billion. This week, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced that an additional $70 billion would be needed to support operations related to the Iran conflict and maintain overall military readiness. Former Pentagon official Mark Kanshan also explained that America's approach to modern warfare is changing. Today's battlefields increasingly combine advanced weapons, such as ballistic and cruise missiles, with large numbers of low-cost drones. According to Kanshan, this new strategy also includes explosive-filled naval drones, which the United States has reportedly used extensively in operations targeting Iranian maritime positions. A recent study by the American Enterprise Institute estimates that the conflict has already cost the United States around $35 billion. Reports also suggest that the scale of weapon use has been enormous. More than 1,200 missile interceptors have reportedly been used, with each interceptor costing about $4 million. In addition, over 1,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles have reportedly been launched, roughly 10 times the number the United States typically purchases in a single year. The report also claims that nearly 1,100 long-range precision missiles, originally intended for potential future conflicts with countries such as China, have already been used during operations over Iran. If accurate, this level of military spending and weapons consumption could reduce America's ability to respond quickly to other crises around the world. Military resources shift to the Middle East. Reports indicate that key weapons systems and unmanned aircraft previously deployed in Eastern Europe to help deter Russia have been reduced. At the same time, the United States has reportedly moved military equipment, including Patriot air defense systems, from South Korea and the South China Sea to strengthen its presence in the Middle East against potential threats involving Iran. Senator Jack Reed, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, has repeatedly warned that replacing the weapons already used could take years. There is no doubt that the United States still possesses the world's largest and most powerful military. Its overall weapons stockpile remains larger than that of any other nation. However, much of America's military strength depends on highly advanced and expensive weapons that cannot be produced overnight. Reports also say that President Donald Trump has met with defense manufacturers and urged them to increase production. For many analysts, that is another sign that replenishing military stockpiles has become an urgent priority. A shift in U.S. strategy as Iran's military capabilities have reportedly weakened in some areas.
Coalition in Yemen says it's bombed military sites linked to the Ansarullah Houthis. It says the sites were being used to threaten commercial ships.
The United States now has greater operational flexibility. Instead of relying heavily on expensive long-range weapons like the Tomahawk cruise missile, the U.S. Air Force is increasingly using lower-cost precision-guided bombs, including JDAMs, for many of its operations. Mark Kanshan, a former U.S. Marine Corps colonel and senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says that after the initial wave of long-range strikes, the United States can transition to cheaper missiles and precision bombs. He also believes that this approach could be sustained for a much longer period. According to Kanshan, as the conflict continues, the number of remaining high-value targets naturally decreases, causing the pace of military operations to slow over time. He added that the United States has tens of thousands of JDAM bombs in its inventory. However, supplies of some of the country's most advanced and costly air defense systems remain much more limited. America's air defense faces growing pressure during the early stages of the conflict. America's air defense systems played a critical role in intercepting retaliatory missile attacks launched by Iran. Among the most important weapons were the Patriot missile systems, which remain in extremely high demand. Besides the United States, America's Arab allies and Ukraine also rely on these missiles for their air defense. Each Patriot interceptor reportedly costs around $4 million, and the United States is believed to produce only about 700 Patriot missiles per year. If Iran continues launching ballistic missiles at a sustained pace, analysts warn that the United States could begin to deplete its limited stockpile of Patriot interceptors. According to CSIS military expert Mark Kanshan, the United States may have had around 1,600 Patriot missiles in its inventory before the recent conflict. However, he believes that number has already been significantly reduced. Kanshan says the United States could continue conducting air-to-ground operations for an extended period. However, maintaining a prolonged air defense campaign would be far more challenging because interceptor missiles are consumed much faster and are difficult to replace. He also suggested that if President Donald Trump were willing to reduce the number of Patriot missiles committed to other regions, the United States could strengthen its ability to counter Iran in the short term. However, Kanshan warned that such a move could come with a major strategic risk. Redirecting Patriot systems away from the Pacific region could weaken America's military posture there and potentially increase the risk of future tensions or conflict. Trump meets defense manufacturers as war costs continue to climb. President Donald Trump's meeting with America's leading defense manufacturers is being viewed by many analysts as a sign that the country's military stockpiles are facing increasing pressure. America is firing missiles worth millions of dollars. Every advanced weapon launched by the United States carries an enormous price tag. As a result, the ongoing conflict has become one of the most expensive military operations in recent years. According to U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, the conflict involving Iran has already cost the United States approximately $37.5 billion. This newly announced figure marks a sharp increase from an earlier estimate of $25 billion, highlighting how rapidly the financial burden of the conflict has grown in just a matter of weeks. During testimony before lawmakers, Pentagon officials defended their request for an additional $67 billion in emergency funding to support ongoing military operations and maintain combat readiness. The cost of war keeps rising. A closer look at these numbers suggests that the Trump administration's military campaign in the Middle East is creating growing financial and strategic pressure on the United States. As the conflict continues, billions of dollars are being added to the total cost. What many expected to remain a long-range air campaign now appears to be expanding into a far more complex military operation requiring costly logistics, sustained deployments, and increased support across the region. The Pentagon's request for another $67 billion is widely seen as a clear indication that military stockpiles are under pressure and that the demands of the conflict continue to grow. Political pressure is also increasing. The rising military budget is also becoming a major issue in American domestic politics. With inflation and economic pressures already affecting many households, the continued flow of billions of taxpayer dollars toward military operations in the Middle East has sparked growing criticism from Democratic lawmakers and some Republicans in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. The debate over military spending is becoming increasingly intense as the financial cost of the conflict continues to rise. What could happen next? Some strategic and financial analysts warn that if the conflict continues at its current pace, or expands into a broader regional war involving attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, the overall cost could eventually reach hundreds of billions of dollars. They caution that such an outcome could place significant pressure on America's economy, military resources, and long-term global strategic position. As the situation continues to evolve, the financial and military consequences of the conflict remain closely watched by governments and analysts around the world. Trump signals a bigger strike as Iran continues to resist. President Donald Trump has revealed that he is close to making a decision on launching a military operation against Iran that would be larger than the previous Operation Epic Fury. In an interview with Axios, Trump said, "I'm considering a military strike on a scale never seen before. I'm very close to making that decision, and our preparations are complete." However, several media outlets have pointed out that Trump has made similar warnings against Iran in the past, but many of those threats were never carried out. When asked whether Israel would take part in any future operation, Trump replied confidently, "If I asked Israel, they would join within 2 minutes. But we don't need anyone's help." He also acknowledged that if Israel became directly involved, it could trigger a stronger retaliatory response from Iran and further increase tensions across the region. Trump added that he believes additional military pressure is necessary to push Iran toward a new agreement. According to him, they haven't felt enough pain yet. His remarks suggest that Washington may still view military pressure as a way to force Iran back to the negotiating table. Iran continues to show its military resilience despite facing pressure from the United States, Israel, and several Gulf allies. Iran has continued to demonstrate its ability to resist. Over many years, the country has invested heavily in developing its own military technology without relying heavily on foreign assistance. Iran's missile and drone programs have expanded steadily since the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted from 1980 to 1988. Today, Iran is capable of producing both short-range and long-range ballistic missiles, many of which have reportedly been used during recent military operations involving Israel. Military analysts who examined missiles launched by Yemen's Houthi movement toward Saudi Arabia have also claimed that many of those weapons were manufactured in Iran. Iran's drone strategy. When President Trump announced the start of military operations against Iran, he stated that the country's missile industry would be completely destroyed. However, little attention was given to Iran's rapidly expanding drone program. As soon as the conflict intensified, Iran reportedly launched more than 2,000 low-cost drones toward targets across the Middle East. Military analysts believe these drones were intended to overwhelm enemy air defense systems, create confusion, and stretch defensive resources across multiple fronts. Many of these were Shahd kamikaze drones, also known as loitering munitions. Unlike traditional drones, Shard drones carry explosive warheads and destroy themselves by crashing directly into their targets, making them an inexpensive but potentially effective weapon on the modern battlefield. Iran's low-cost drones continue to shape the battlefield. One of the deadliest reported drone attacks against U.S. forces occurred when a drone struck a military base in Kuwait, reportedly killing 6 American soldiers. Drone warfare has also had a major impact on the region's energy sector, with repeated attacks disrupting oil-related infrastructure. Because drones are relatively simple to build and much cheaper to produce than advanced missiles, they have become one of the most widely used weapons in the conflict, allowing large-scale attacks at a fraction of the cost. The SHAHED-136 drone, one of Iran's best-known long-range drones, is the SHAHED-136. According to reports, each drone costs between $20,000 and $50,000, making it significantly cheaper than most modern guided missiles. Unlike many commercial or remotely piloted drones, the SHAHED-136 is not continuously controlled by an operator after launch. Instead, it is pre-programmed before takeoff using satellite navigation and waypoint guidance. Once launched, it automatically follows its assigned flight path until it reaches its intended target. This makes the drone relatively simple to operate while allowing it to travel long distances without constant human control. Long-range and difficult to detect, the SHAHED-136 is believed to have a range of up to 2,500 kilometers, giving it the ability to strike targets far from its launch point. In theory, a drone launched from Tehran could travel as far as Athens, Greece. Although it is much slower than a ballistic missile, its small size and low-altitude flight path can make it more difficult for some radar and early warning systems to detect, especially those primarily designed to track high-speed missile threats. How long can Iran sustain the pressure? One of the biggest unanswered questions is how long Iran can continue maintaining this level of military pressure. Before the conflict, many analysts believed Iran had produced tens of thousands of Shard drones. However, after days of reported strikes by the United States and Israel, it remains unclear how much of Iran's drone stockpile and production capacity is still intact. As the conflict continues, the true size of Iran's remaining arsenal remains one of the biggest unknowns in the region. Iran continues supporting the Houthis beyond strengthening its own military. Iran is also reportedly continuing to support the Houthi movement in Yemen. According to multiple sources, Tehran's goal is to help its allies disrupt shipping routes through the Red Sea, one of the world's most important maritime trade corridors. 4 sources familiar with the matter, along with officials from Yemen's Ministry of Information and a regional security analyst, told Reuters that Iran reportedly transported military equipment to Yemen on July 13. 2 Iranian sources, who requested anonymity for security reasons, also told Reuters that between 10 and 21 commanders from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, were involved in the operation, including several senior officers. According to the report, the aircraft originally planned to fly to Sana'a, which is controlled by the Houthis. However, after damage to the airport from Saudi airstrikes, the flight was reportedly redirected to the Red Sea port city of Hodeidah. One source claimed that the IRGC commanders traveled to Yemen to support Houthi military operations and provide training on newly deployed missile systems. The report also alleged that Iran sent gold on the same aircraft to help finance Houthi activities. Iran has repeatedly denied providing military assistance to the Houthis or helping develop their missile capabilities. Iran's long-term strategy, according to Dr. H.A. Hellier, a Middle East analyst at the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, Iran's military strategy is not focused on defeating the United States or Israel in a conventional war. Instead, he argues that Tehran's objective is to prolong the conflict, expand it across the region, and increase the economic cost for its opponents. In his view, Iran understands that it is unlikely to achieve a decisive military victory through traditional warfare. Instead, Its strategy is to prevent its adversaries from securing a quick victory while forcing them to spend more time, money, and military resources. A war of attrition. Associate Professor Nicolas Giroski of the Center for International Studies in France describes Iran's approach as a war of attrition. The goal, he says, is to gradually wear down opposing forces by exhausting their military capabilities, financial resources, and political support over time. Rather than seeking a rapid battlefield victory, Iran appears to be betting that a prolonged conflict will eventually weaken its opponents. Iran's military strength. Iran remains one of the largest military powers in the Middle East. Current estimates suggest that the country can mobilize around 610,000 personnel if needed. That figure includes approximately 350,000 regular military troops and 190,000 members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, in addition to other reserve and support forces. As the conflict continues, military analysts believe that Iran's strategy will depend not only on its own armed forces, but also on its regional allies, drone and missile capabilities, and its ability to sustain a prolonged war. Iran's regional allies. Iran's influence extends beyond its own military forces. Tehran continues to support the Houthi movement in Yemen, as well as armed groups operating in Iraq. It also maintains close ties with Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Palestinian territories. Together, these organizations are often referred to as the Axis of Resistance, a network of groups that generally align with Iran's regional interests. Although Hamas has been significantly weakened following the conflict that began in 2023, many analysts believe Iran still has the ability to sustain a prolonged regional confrontation through its network of allies. A strategy built on endurance. Experts point to the Iran-Iraq War as an example of Iran's willingness to endure long and costly conflicts. Despite having fewer military resources at the time and suffering repeated attacks on major cities, Iran continued fighting for years. According to Associate Professor Nicolas Giroski, the key question is not simply Iran's military strength, but whether its political leadership and security institutions can remain stable and maintain public support throughout a prolonged conflict. Growing pressure on missile forces. Analysts also suggest that Iran's missile units are operating under increasing pressure. Reports indicate that missile crews are becoming fatigued, coordination challenges are emerging, and some strikes have reportedly missed their intended targets. Experts warn that as attacks on Iran's missile infrastructure intensify, the conflict could spread further across the region, increasing the risk of a wider confrontation. Reports of a new missile program. Recent reports also claim that Iran is continuing work on a new missile project that has attracted significant international attention. According to these reports, the missile's reported capabilities and destructive potential have raised concerns among military analysts and policymakers, particularly in the United States. However, many details about the program remain unconfirmed, and its full capabilities have not been independently verified. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest updates on global events and breaking news. Thank you for your continued support, and until next time, stay safe and take care.